Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am the City Witch, and today we're going to be taking a look at this new book that I recently completed called Awakening the Witch Blood, Embodying the Art Magical by Nathan King. Now, Nathan King is a fairly new writer in the spiritual witchy occult community, and I certainly have never read any material by Nathan King before, so this was the first time reading a book written by him. I have to say I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was very pleasantly surprised, but more on that later. If you are new to my channel or you haven't watched any of my book reviews before, it's very simple, guys. I perform these book reviews to help you guys make up your mind if this is the right book for you or not, saving you valuable time, money and energy. You will get a look inside the contents of this book and I'll give you a flip through. I will talk to you about the positives and negatives that I personally noticed as I worked my way through this book, and I will score it from 1 to 10 at the end and let you know if it made it into my magical library or not. My book reviews are always my honest thoughts and opinions. You do not have to agree with my opinions. The hope is that by watching this video, it will help you decide if this is the right book for you or not. That's all I'm after, guys. So, without further ado, let's have a look at what the back of the book tells us. Drawing on the myriad of beliefs from European witchcraft traditions, Nathan King has created an impressive guidebook combining mythology and folklore with operative rituals designed to enliven and quicken the metaphorical witch blood that courses through our veins. Learn the mysterious and often convoluted origins of the witch's power and dive deep into practice. Learn the secrets of magical trance work, techniques to raise magical power, and a plethora of unique spoken charms and spells. Instructions for honouring the old witch gods accompany rituals of ancestral healing and methods of induced witch flight. Awaken the witch within yourself. Experience the mysteries and magic of the witch blood and let Nathan King show you how to claim your own power as a witch. There's something for everyone in awakening the witch blood, regardless of your magical path. Okay, so let's take a look at the contents of the book and see what we have. So this book is divided into two parts. The first part of this book discusses the history of witchcraft, covering the basic information that you need to know, what the witch blood is believed to be and the different theories behind that. Witchcraft through the centuries is discussed and how it's changed, with a close look at both traditional witchcraft, also known as the Crooked Path, and of course Wicca. Some famous witches are discussed in part 1 and how they influenced practitioners and their practice in different areas of the world. A close look at the goddess, god, witch mother and witch father is also provided, along with a discussion about the witch's devil, and of course the triple goddess is also mentioned. With this book, you are getting a full breakdown of what a witch is, where our power is believed to come from, what the witch blood is and the theories behind that, and how we influence the world around us with our various talents and skills. But also, you're getting a look at the various deities, spirits, and energies that we are known to work with, as well as how they have transformed along with witchcraft over the centuries. Part 1 of the book includes Chapter 1, Knowing Our Truth, Know Thyself. Chapter 2, Defining the Witch Blood. And in that bit, we get Of the Blood, Hereditary Witchcraft, Origins of Witching Notions Today, Witchcraft and the Search for Validity. Chapter 3, Skull and Blood Ancestors. The Ancestral Realm, the Underworld, Summerlands and the Place of the Beloved Dead. Ancestors of blood and bone, ancestors of land, ancestors of inspiration, ancestors of adoption, the wandering and restless ancestors, the witch's mighty dead, and working with the dead. Chapter 4, the first visitors, gods and giants, masks of gods, fire and light, giants among men, ancestral and tutelary deities, mythos of the sacred kingship. Chapter 5, the old ones, the witch gods, Lady of the Moon, Venus, the Earth Mother, the Lady of the Crossroads, the Queen of Elfame, Baphomet, the Horned One, the Light and Lover, the Stag. Pan, the goat-footed god. Dionysus, the earth shaker and liberator and shapeshifters. Chapter 6, Aradia, goddess of the witches. Mystical origins of Magdalena, the witchmaker and messiah, Aridia herself. Diana, queen of all witcheries. Aradia's teachings, reading the gospel. The Espat, food and drink, the charge of the goddess and lunar possession and Greco-Roman ritual. Chapter 7, the Grigori. Angelic roots, Sumerian, Canaanite and Hebraic. I'm trying to pronounce all these correctly, so bear with me, guys. Zoroastrian, Solomonic and Greco-Roman trances. Angels versus archangels, falling from grace. The Renaissance, Solomon, Enoch and John Dee. Madeleine Montalban. Heralding the legions, approaching the directions of the watchers, eyes of the sky and awakening, charm of the Grigori. And then chapter 8, Lucifer, the bringer of light, how you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, fires of Azazel, the folklore's devil, and recommended reading material. Then we have part 2 of the book. Activating witch blood within you and accessing your power is taught in this section, providing a variety of techniques you can try in order to do this successfully. Things like trance work, traveling, over the hedge, astral projection, breath work, the witch's sight, meditation, psychic gifts, energy work, control of your energy. You are also given spells and rituals and dedication rituals that you can perform to dedicate yourself to the path of the witch. Now, disclaimer, there is a little bit of talk of blood magic in this book, but only little bits of information here and there. So there's not a whole chapter on it and it's not majorly discussed, but there is talk about blood magic in this book, just to warn you guys. Part 2 also discusses tools of the witch and a witch's altar and how to hold a space energetically, casting circles, building a cone of power, raising energy correctly and directing it. So that's kind of all the stuff you can expect from part 2. So as for the chapters, chapter 9, rituals and spells of the witch blood. Chapter 10, preparation of the art. So ritual mindset and altered states of consciousness. The witch's breath. So this is where we learn breath work. There's some grounding, aligning and altered state triggers. Location work, the magic circle, ritual baths and building abilities. Chapter 11, instruments of the art, tools of the trade. So the altar, the tools, hallowing. If you don't know what hallowing is, guys, hallowing is when you dedicate your ritual tools and make them sacred in your practice. Chapter 12, trance work. Trance technique overview, trance work and witch blood, body postures, boundaries and recalls, the spectre, eye and cord, allies and oracular experience, Siddhar and seething, ingress, the trance induction. Chapter 13, raising power, techniques to quicken the witch blood. So this is where you're using techniques to activate your witch blood and learn to control your magic and power. So raising power, quickening the witch blood, directing the witch blood, releasing the power, cone of power and various techniques. The witch's word in chapter 14, charms of power. So here we use our voice and the power of our words. So words of power, amulets and talismans, rhyme and reason, practical charms, spirit charms, lover charms. Chapter 15, the dedication of the witch blood. So ritual dedication. This is where you dedicate yourself to your craft and practice and actually tell the universe that you are a witch. Chapter 16, Blood Mother, Blood Keeper, honouring the witch gods. So preparations, the rite of the Blood Mother and the Blood Keeper. Chapter 17, healing the blood, rite of the ancestors, the rite of healing. Chapter 18, flight of the witch. So flying, so here we talk about, the witch's flight and the witch's Sabbath and things like that. So flying, the elaborate theory of witchcraft, the heretical history, how witches travel, the Ungentium sabbatai, flying ointment. So the flying ointment is discussed. The rite of night flight, flight tincture, and flight incense. So here some recipes are given to create items that you can use to induce the witch's flight. So there's the ointment, there's the tincture, and an incense provided, as well as a ritual so that you can actually act out the witch's flight if you want. Chapter 19, the first witch, a rite of veneration, the rite of the first witch. So this is like connecting to your ancestry and past witches. Chapter 20, operative magic, healthy poppet spell, the witch bottle, nails on the hearth, flame and nettles, witch balls, Madam Money's magnet spell, the envelope petition, self-compassion spell, lover's talisman for romance and partnership, sexy night spell, a malefica, bell, book and candle, pin 'em down, hex skull or witch bowl, the twisted tree spell, plagued mind spell, and the malum. And then you do have a further reading list and an index as well. So I'll just give you a quick look through the book and then I'll talk to you about all the positives. So we have our introduction, and then the book, as you can see, has a lot of footnotes. All of Nathan's sources and books that he gained information knowledge from are given to you throughout the book, which is something I very much appreciated. So we have defining the witch blood, of the blood, hereditary witchcraft, origins of witches today, witchcraft and the search for validity, skulls and bones. This is where we look at ancestors. So ancestors of blood and bone, ancestors for adoption, the wandering and restless ancestors, how to set up an ancestor altar and venerate and honour your ancestors. There's a beautiful little rhyme here that you can use as an incantation. In blood and bone and in spirit and place, by dust and skull is death's holy face. Land of the quick, on hallowed ground I tread, between lands of the living and lands of the dead. So it's kind of like a way to open up the veil. Everything that's in this book is useful and usable. Nothing was a waste of time. I found everything insightful and interesting. Ancestral work, we've got the old ones and the witch gods. So here we look at the Lady of the Moon, Venus, the Queen of Elfame, Lady of the Crossroads, we've got Baphomet. So there's a close look at all the gods, like I said, how they've changed and transformed, how they influenced our practice. Slight touch on shape-shifting here. We've got Aradia as goddess of witches, and also known as one of the queens of witches. Mystical origins of her, the Witchmaker and Messiah, so Aridia herself and where she came from. The Gospel of Aridia is mentioned. Diana as Queen of the Witches is talked about as well. The charge of the goddess. So there's loads of different bits of information in the first half of the book. And as you can see, it's laid out really nicely. The chapter on Lucifer was one of the most interesting chapters in the book for me. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the discussion on the witch's devil. That was also very interesting. And there's also some really nice artwork in this book. So in this section, this is kind of your practical sections. This is where you expect to find spells, rituals, techniques to practice, breath work, things like that. So your altar, tools. You've got trance work, body postures, dance, using your voice, the witch's sight. So there's a lot of different techniques that are covered in this book. How to raise a cone of power, its importance. How to direct the energy when you've raised it. How to brew potions. There's loads of rhymes that are given to you as well that you can use in your practice. How to dedicate yourself as well. Invoking the elements. Preparation for any ritual and spell work. There's a healing rite for you and your ancestors. the witch's Sabbath, the witch's travel, witch's flight, making the flying ointment. There's just loads and loads of information in this book, guys. It's definitely one of those books that is a bit of a mix. So you've got your first half that's very informative, giving you all the background on witchcraft. So if you don't know any of that and you're a novice or a beginner, absolutely fantastic. And then the second half of the book starts teaching you all the foundational stuff that you need to know as a witch in order to practice properly, safely, and get results from your work. So what did I think of this book? So here's my positives. This is a fantastic book for a beginner or novice because it covers a little bit about everything that you need to know to get you started. The book is super easy to understand and doesn't overcomplicate things. Nathan breaks everything down into small chunks and provides you all his resource material. Nathan provides lots of theories for where the witch blood and power might come from. I liked that he didn't claim any were more correct over the other, but instead allows you to make up your own mind. And some of the theories given were really interesting. So we had the theory that witches are descendants of angels. So at one point in biblical lore, there is references to angels coming down to earth and mixing with humans and having children with us, which created the Nephilim. The Nephilim refused to leave when angels were being recalled to the heavens and the angelic plane, and thus remained on earth, having more and more children. Another theory is through fairies. So fairies were known to swap their fairy children with ours. So you'd end up with what's known as a changeling. They're obviously raised in the human world, but they have that ethereal beauty and they have this kind of power to them that just can't be explained. So that's one theory. Another theory is the children that are taken by the fairies and raised in the fairy realm, when they're returned to the earthly realm, they also are very changed and have learned magic because it's seeped into their blood based on what they've eaten and experienced and how they've grown up. Also, fairies like to take a lot of lovers, so therefore you end up with mixed bloodlines. They're not the only creatures that did that. Dragons are shapeshifters and are known to shapeshift and mix with humans. So there you have drakes, which are known as half human, half dragon hybrids. Then there's demigods. So we know how promiscuous many of the gods can be, and many of them had children with mortals. And when that happened, they had magic and godly powers within their blood. They went on to have more and more children, and even though the blood might have become diluted, some of the powers and abilities and skills could explain where the witch blood comes from. So they're just some of the theories and ideas that were discussed in this book. But Nathan doesn't claim any one of them is correct. He just gives you all of the theories and lets you make up your own mind, which I really appreciated. All Nathan's resources are provided in the book. There are plenty of footnotes and information. He tells you stories and quotes and actively, honestly tells you where he got the information from. Love that. I love when an author cites their sources, is honest and upfront, and tells you where they got it from, so you can cross-reference and research for yourself and check that what they're saying is correct. Very famous witches are discussed in this book. Nathan's approach to this topic was very blunt but honest. He bluntly tells us the bullshit that a lot of them produced when it comes to witchcraft and how they influenced witchcraft today and what was originally believed to be true about them because of what they said, and now we have kind of the truth. So he talks a lot about that. I loved his honest, blunt, upfront approach. It was a breath of fresh air for me, and I love that he pointed out the lies, the tactics, and the general bullshit. That was great because a lot of the older books didn't do that. They played into what was being said and told to them, and they just took it as gospel and truth. And over time, I think many people have just believed it. So now we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty, we're breaking things down, we are looking for evidence, and we're realizing that a lot of stuff we were told was just not true. One of the biggest liars around was Aleister Crowley, and he was not a very nice person. I do not like him at all. In fact, many practitioners don't. He did add to witchcraft and do a lot of books on very interesting subjects, but how he obtained that information was very questionable. And some of the things he said was also flat out lies, very questionable. And there was just a lot of mystery around what he said that makes it untrustworthy. But go and research that for yourselves, guys. I loved all of the various ideas and techniques provided for raising energy, such as using song and dance, drumming and beats, rhythms, chanting, hymns even. And there was talk of using pleasure and pain to build energy and power. Trance work, breath work, using your sight and the voice of the witch, how to mix some of these techniques together to get increased effects. So there was a lot of really interesting stuff talked about. I loved that Nathan talks about the witch's tools and altar. This is something that I think many modern books are kind of avoiding lately, because there's this big thing at the moment online about not bothering having any tools and an altar, and that you don't need all these things. Nathan does say that you don't have to have the tools, and he's absolutely correct. He is upfront about that. It is up to you whether or not you want to buy tools for your craft or not. He does also say that it doesn't matter where you get your tools from or whether you make them or not. If the tool feels right for you in your practice, that's all that matters, and I completely agree with that. However, if you do choose to buy tools, Nathan mentions how they become egregores over time, which is something I've discussed on my channel and platform for many, many years now. Your tools, as you work with them, they gain this magical personality. They grow with you over time, and eventually you might not need them as often, but because they are egregores, they add to your craft and practice and become a spirit ally. So it's definitely worth having a few tools that you work with on a regular basis that will become these powerful allies for you later down the line. If you do want to collect tools for your practice, Nathan provides an excellent Halloween ritual for dedicating and binding them to you. Not something that is talked about much these days, so I very much appreciated that that was included in this book as well. One of the things I have enjoyed the most about Nathan's work is when he talks about the various witch skills that any witch might possess or learn. He looks at them historically and then again in modern practices. He tells you from cultures all around the world what those skills are called or known as, what the skill does, and how that practice has utilized it. This gives you a very good idea of how you might recognize that skill, learn it, and use it in your own practice. This was also great for when different names are used for talking about the various different skills discussed in this book. So you know that if you hear a name for something, you can cross-reference it in this book to find out what other names it was known by, to figure out if it's something you already can do or not, and if it's a skill you want to learn. At no point in this book does Nathan say any technique is better than any other. His goal is to provide you with as much information as possible so you can figure out what works for you and what doesn't. I also didn't notice any information from any closed practices or anything that might upset people in this book. Nathan put a lot of his personality into this book, making it a fun, enjoyable read, easy for anyone to enjoy. I don't think this book is overly too complex or has anything in it that would be too confusing. And this is easily one of my favourite books of 2024. Now for the negatives, which I don't like giving negatives with books, but sometimes you do mention and notice a few things that are being discussed in the book. So let's get into it, guys. Negatives. It was difficult to find negatives with this book, but after really thinking about it, there were two that came up for me. Throughout the book, I kept thinking that Nathan was going to discuss the topic of blood magic. After the title of the book being called Awakening the Witch Blood, I think I was right to assume there was going to be some blood magic in this book. We discuss where a witch's power might come from, and part of this involves genetics and blood ancestry. But sadly, the use of blood in magic was only mentioned a couple of times briefly throughout this book. We do not get a full discussion or chapter on the topic of blood magic at all. I must admit, I was slightly disappointed. However, after completing this book, I now know this book is aimed at beginners. The topic of blood magic most certainly isn't a beginner-friendly subject, so I do understand why it's not included. However, I think a small entry about it from a historical point of view and perhaps safety tips for collecting it or kind of discussing the magical properties of blood would have been a nice addition to this book and would have rounded it off, in my opinion. The second negative for me, the book is divided into two parts, as I've discussed. And part one is very informative. It covers all the information to get you started. And part two is meant to be the more practical side of things, where you're practicing the techniques discussed. However, I would say that the second half of the book is still primarily just information. There isn't as much practical activities for you to do as you might expect. Nathan discusses many different subjects in the book, but doesn't teach how to do them, or at least doesn't teach how to do most of them. Therefore, this book is for educational purposes and introducing you to various different topics and techniques that you will have to go away and research in order to learn them fully. So my recommendation is start with this book, use it as a beginner foundational book, let it introduce you to many different techniques and ideas and concepts. And then when you find one that you like, go and buy a book that covers that topic in its entirety and read it and learn everything you can about it. That would be my advice. But as a beginner novice book, this is fantastic. I think it's good for intermediate witches as well. And I think it's really good for a historic look at things and an honest point of view on all of the bullshit that we've been told out there over the years. But for me, this book was a fantastic read. I thoroughly enjoyed it and easily would give it a good solid 9 out of 10, which is a pretty high score for me, guys. So I do recommend this book. It has made it into my magical library and I thoroughly recommend it and enjoyed it. So that is my book review. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I do hope you enjoyed this book review and I will speak to you again soon in my next video. If you enjoyed it, give me that thumbs up, click the bell, and YouTube will tell you when my next video comes out. If you'd like to offer light, love and support to my channel, you can do that through Amazon or through my PayPal link. If you'd like to book any of my magical healing or divination services, you can do that through Facebook, Instagram, X, Tumblr, or via email. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, please email me or leave a comment on this video. Thank you so much, guys. As always, take care of each other, be kind, and I'll speak to you soon. Blessed be.